looking at consensual non-monogamy, which when we were looking at our interviews with our 29 invisible sexual minority women, kind of unexpectedly came up as a very common experience. And so what consensual non-monogamy means is when all partners in a relationship consent to one or more people within the relationship having sexual and or romantic relationships with other people. And so there's a lot of diversity in what that can look like. It can be polyamory, swinging, open relationships and open marriages, threesomes, lots of different varieties of relationships, which we see a lot of that variety in our participants. And so it's really interesting that we're able to look at that because there is very little research about consensual non-monogamy, particularly in the context of pregnancy and parenthood, and how pregnant women or new parents may make decisions about participating in consensual non-monogamy and what kinds of experiences they have. And especially, I don't think there's any research on that with this particular population. And so in our sample, 2/3 of the women had at least talked about with their partner or considered engaging in some kind of consensual non-monogamy, and half of those women actually did engage in some form of consensual non-monogamy at some point during their current relationship. And so we did a qualitative analysis of what these women were talking about when they would discuss consensual non-monogamy, and we identified 9 major kinds of themes or categories of what they're talking about. And so the first 2 of those are really looking at the what and why, or what and how. First, looking at relationship structure. People were involved in lots of different kinds of relationships, so swinging or open relationships. Looking at who was engaging in that. Was it both partners or just one? And who were they having those relationships with? Then looking at the processes of kind of how they made those decisions, how they negotiated that with their partners, that whole process of finding out what works for them. Then we were looking at benefits and barriers, so kind of looking at the motivations of what these women were getting out of their consensual non-monogamy engagement, or why they were motivated or interested in doing so. And the barriers of, if they've encountered negative responses, if they're concerned about sexual health risks, or particularly in the context of parenthood, how they might explain their consensual non-monogamy engagement to a child. So the kinds of things that might prevent them or discourage them from participating. We looked at outness and disclosure of why women choose to tell or not to tell others about their consensual non-monogamy engagement, and what kinds of responses they receive when they do. We looked at the kind of feelings and emotions around their consensual non-monogamy, if they thought it might be a source of discomfort or jealousy, if it's something exciting or something of curiosity about, or even just not being a big deal. We looked at the role of environment and social context, such as living in a progressive city, having a polyamorous or swinging community available to them, or living in a more conservative or restrictive environment. And then another thing that came up that was pretty interesting was gendered beliefs around consensual non-monogamy. So kinds of things like that being polyamorous and dating that way might be harder for men, or that men are always up to have threesomes, those kinds of beliefs. And then lastly, we're looking at the role of time and how their experiences or perceptions of consensual monogamy might change over the course of the study. And so right now we've kind of developed that framework as the important things that people are talking about. And so our next step is going through and kind of systematically applying this framework and then writing it up so that we can get this better understanding of how these women are thinking about and experiencing consensual non-monogamous relationships